Hello, Misfits, and welcome. I know it's been a couple weeks since I've done one of these videos, so I felt it high time to do one again. Today's video is going to be all about roleplay, specifically how to get your table into roleplaying a little bit more. Now, I know that roleplay isn't for everyone, and that's perfectly okay. I think people should play the games that they want to play. It doesn't really matter. If you like less roleplay and I like more, that's fine. We're not hurting each other. I don't see any reason to get upset over that. But I do think there are some pretty strong merits for why role-playing is such a fun and key and important part of tabletop role-playing games. So that's kind of what today's video is about, and let's just get into it. So why is role-playing an important part of Dungeons & Dragons, or Pathfinder, or Call of Cthulhu, or any of these tabletop role-playing games? Well, when you have the role-playing component, it kind of heightens everything. It kind of brings everything up to the next level. You know, your big twists and heavy hits hit harder and feel more impactful. You get more attached to your characters because they feel like real people. And if you don't have the role-playing component to that, then your character is less of a character and more of just like a vehicle for abilities and fighting and things like that. So that's part of why I really like the role-playing element of D&D or any tabletop role-playing game. If you've got a villain that the party has been fighting, like the entire campaign, and at the end you finally kill them, yeah, that'd be pretty cool without roleplay as a part of your game. But if there's extra layers to that character, like they killed the family of one of the party members, or they stole something important from another party member, or things like that, it adds this extra layer, and when you finally take them down, it feels so much more. It feels better, stronger, more impactful. So those are sort of some reasons as to why I think roleplay is important. But it's also difficult. Like, it's not an easy aspect of the game, especially if you are a newer player. You can feel a little awkward, you can not know how to really get into it. It can be sort of a weird thing, and you do need to strike sort of a balance between your roleplay and the rest of the game as well. So let's talk about how to make roleplaying easier for the people at your table and how to encourage them to do it more. There's a few things that you can do. I think, if I remember correctly, I've boiled this list down into 5 different things. We'll see if that's accurate. You'll find out by the end of this video if that is the correct number. But number 1, the first thing that you need to do is you need to talk about all of this in session 0. You need to check in with your table and find out what they want. Do they want a lot of roleplay? Do they want any roleplay? You need to touch base with them, figure out what they are willing to try, what they want out of the game, and you need to come to some sort of understanding with them. If you don't do this first, then the rest of this is just sort of pointless. There's no point in throwing in a bunch of roleplay opportunities if up front they said no. You can't force it. It has to be something that they want to try and that they willingly test out. Number 2, when you're in this sort of session 0 pre-game kind of prep stage, you need to get your characters to create backstories. Now, they don't need to be novels. They need to just sort of be like a series of things, like why are you adventuring? Do you have a family? What's your relationship to them? What is a goal that you have? What's a fear that you harbor? Just sort of some simple little touchstones for these characters to flesh them out just a little bit more. Little personality quirks, little things that they gravitate towards or avoid. You need to have your players create backstories for their characters. I have a very specific set list of questions that I make all my players fill out for their characters. And maybe I should do something about that. Maybe I should make a separate video where I cover those things. But it's nothing long, it's nothing crazy, and if they want to add more to that, they can. If they have different things that they want to talk about and include in their backstory, that's something you can work out with them. But yeah, have some sort of backstory created for these different characters, because that is going to inform the types of roleplay scenarios and opportunities you might throw at them later. Alright, number 3? I think we're on 3. This is really, really easy, but it's something that I think is really important. When you're playing the game, call your players by their characters' names. I do this all the time. At my table, I'm not asking Casey or Joe or Emily to do things. I am asking Ronan, Isla, or Revan to do things, okay? This is not about the players rolling a die. This is about the characters finding out if the skills that they have honed are going to be enough to overcome a challenge. So I don't say, Sarah, make a dexterity saving throw. I would say, Torvir, make a dexterity saving throw. I kind of do this, one, for myself, so that I get used to seeing them as individual characters and seeing them as sort of separate from the players. And 2, I do this because I want them to get used to the idea of jumping into character. I want them to get used to the idea of separating their own personal feelings and how they would handle things from how their characters might handle things. I think that distinction is really, really important. I hope that makes sense, the way that I've explained that. But I do this throughout the entire campaign. The only times when I call a player by their actual name and not their character's name is when I'm asking them a question sort of like above table, like outside of the story, or if I'm asking for something that's not tied to their specific character. Like, if I'm asking for a player to make a d20 roll to see if there's a random encounter, I would probably ask the player for that roll because it's not something tied to the character. But that's just something I do. I think it's really important. I feel like I definitely read or heard that advice somewhere way back when, and I've tried to find it and I can't at all, but I know like there was some reason I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that, and then I don't remember the source at all, but I've just done it ever since, so hopefully that works for you. Something else you need to do is when you are prompting these characters with questions or asking them what they do, whether they choose the right path or the left path, or things like that. If your players answer you in sort of vague descriptors like, oh, I think Torvald would probably do this or answer this NPC in this way, you can sort of guide them to then reiterate that, but in the character's words. Like, okay, well, what exactly would he say specifically? Sometimes I will do this, like in the case of like a bard or someone that's trying to talk their way out of a situation. Like, yeah, I'm gonna see if I can smooth things over and see if I can roll like a persuasion or deception check to get us into this party. I would then ask, all right, but what does Darren say specifically to try and smooth this situation over or get the party the leg up they need? You know, try to turn it back on them so that they have a moment to kind of think about how their character actually would handle the situation, what they would say, what they would be thinking, so that you're not working in these like vague descriptors of like, oh, my character does this, my character says something to this effect. No. What specifically does your character say? What specifically does your character do? Encourage them to be a bit more creative in these areas. This could also be used in combat and getting creative when they're fighting. Like, all right, your character lands the killing blow. I want you to describe to me what exactly they do to finish off this villain. I feel like that's also a part of it, you know? Because they're jumping into their characters and they are imagining this scenario and how they tackle this fight or face off against this foe. I think that's important too. Number 4. Yes, 4. It's important to have downtime after big events. That's where you're going to get these roleplay opportunities and activities, is to have these sort of downtime moments. They have a thrilling chase where they just barely get away at the last second. Give them time to process that and talk to each other about it. They finally kill the big bad after months of tracking them and fighting their minions. Give them time to process that. One of the players almost dies. A favorite NPC does die. Give them time to talk it out and kind of sit in those feelings and emotions after those moments. In my current campaign, we had a couple sessions of some really heavy stuff happening. Some scary revelations were made about an NPC. There were some really stressful events that made the characters feel sort of like powerless or under level for the things they were facing. And I followed that up with, several sessions of just time for them to kind of relax and process what had happened. And that was really, really important. And I talked to them about it, and they really said, they said that they needed that. Like, it had just been so heavy and they needed that sort of moment or moments of levity to sort of balance things out. This is super important. This happens in movies. This happens in video games. You'll have a big moment happen, and then you have the time after to sort of deal with that and process that. Last, you need to ask pointed questions or include specific moments that have ties to these characters' backstories. Know what your character's goals are and sprinkle clues leading to that. Know the things that these characters are worried about and tease those moments. If you're having trouble getting the different characters to talk about this stuff with each other, sometimes it's important to have an NPC that can just jumpstart the conversation. Sometimes I will do this towards the beginning of the campaign, where maybe my players are a little dodgy about sharing their backstory, so I have an NPC there that's like, hey, you just saved me, I don't really know anything about you, who are you, where are you from? And you can take it from there. And that can be a good way to just sort of start the conversation, and maybe they'll bounce off from each other after that. Normally, I try to find ways to connect all these characters together. So when one's answering the NPC's questions, the other one might realize that, oh, we have something in common. And then they start talking, and then it just sort of snowballs from there. This isn't easy. It takes a little bit of planning and preparation. It's going to take some work on your part to kind of figure out how you can connect these things together and kind of ease them into this process of talking about their characters in character. And once you start nudging in that direction, you can start to hit them with more heavy things like their greatest fears in their backstory, or, the key moments of the goals they're trying to accomplish, things like that. You've got your cleric that worships a good deity. Eventually down the line, you can present a situation where they're faced off against some NPC that worships the evil deity that opposes her god, and that creates conflict, and that directly ties to her character and makes her think and feel things that she didn't think about before. You've got your thief with a tendency for stealing, and maybe you confront them with a wanted poster with their face on it in town, and now they have to decide, do I tell the party about this new danger I'm putting you guys in? Do I try to go pay off the bounty? Do I disguise myself? There are lots of different ways in which you can present the different characters with things that kind of force them to confront their own backstories and think in character in a way that they hadn't before. So I think that's really, really important. Now, I should say there are going to be times when the players don't take the bait. They don't bite. They avoid their backstories like the plague. You present them with situations and ask them questions, and they turn tail and run every time. And, it's gonna happen. Some people don't want to delve into their backstories. I would say, every once in a while, continue to try and put them in those situations, continue to try and, encourage them to explore that aspect of their character. But if time and time again they don't, there's not much else you can do. If they don't want to explore it, they don't want to explore it. You can't just go out of your way to chase them down and force them to get into character and confront their past and things like that. It's just not going to happen. People will get out of the game what they want out of it. And if they don't want to go into the whole backstory mess, then, don't make them. Like we said up front, you can't force it. This has to be something that they want to do. You present the breadcrumbs, and if they don't take them, they don't take them. Move on. You've got other characters at your table that you need to juggle and deal with as well. So don't take it to heart. Don't be upset. Just move on. There are other ways to include that character without having to delve into all the nitty-gritty of their backstories and make them, act the mess out of some scene that's playing out at the table. You don't have to do that to have fun. But yeah, these were my tips. I think it actually ended up being 5.5, maybe 6, but these were my tips for getting your players into roleplay more. Some of those tips were more vague than others, so I'm sorry about that. It's sort of a big thing to discuss. It can be hard to put it all in words sometimes, but I did the best that I could. I tried to hit the broad strokes so that you guys had room to kind of handle it in your own way if you really want to. But anyway, if this was helpful for you, if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like and subscribe. That really, really helps me out. But more importantly, leave a comment down below. Tell me about things that you do to help your players get into character and into role-playing. I would love to hear about all of that stuff. But with all of that out of the way, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week, and I will see you again next time. Small quality of life change that I'm gonna make, and I'll probably put this in some sort of post or something as well, but I'm gonna change my upload schedule a little bit. Used to, I always did these tip videos on Mondays. You might have noticed me start to do some of them on Tuesdays instead. I think I'm gonna just commit to them always coming out on Tuesdays now. That gives me more time to get them done. What some of you might not know is my group, my table, we play Sunday nights, and I normally film these videos on Saturdays. So if I film on Saturday, and then Sunday I'm prepping for D&D and hosting a game, if I don't have all my editing done by Saturday night, Sunday night's not really gonna happen. And Monday, I gotta go work. So, yeah, I'm gonna move these to Tuesday. I think that will help me out a great deal. And also, there's a good chance that the Wednesday uploads are about to go away for good. Normally, I put out a Campaign 1 video on Wednesdays, and that campaign is pretty much done. I think the last episode of that is either this week or next week. Yeah, and if you don't know what Campaign 1 is, it was my first ever homebrew campaign. We recorded the audio of it when we played it. We finished that game about a year ago now, I think. Yeah, and I've just been putting it up on YouTube slowly and steadily just to get it somewhere where my players and myself can all listen to it and enjoy it. It was a blast. It was a really important campaign for us. It's got a very special place in our hearts, and it's about to all be up for anybody to listen to and watch. So, yeah, if that's something that interests you, go check it out. There are definitely some things that happen in that campaign that are tied to the things happening in our current campaign. You don't have to listen to that one first to understand the new one, but it doesn't hurt. But anyway, that's kind of all I wanted to say. Just little update for you guys. Little change to make my life a little bit easier. Anyway, have a good day, guys.